He took the arrows meant for the alien queen. Her reward left him speechless. The bolts, tipped with crystalline shards that burn like trapped stars, had found him instead, tearing through the flimsy fabric of his environmental suit, then muscle and bone, before his body could crumple into the thick, cold dust of the forgotten chamber. He'd seen the trajectory aimed squarely at the tall, still figure beside him, and reacted with the unthinking, ingrained instinct of a medic, whose job was always to shield the vulnerable, even if the vulnerable was an alien being moments away from sealing a treaty his people desperately needed. Pain exploded, a white fire against the deepening gray of his vision. He heard a sharp, inhuman cry, not of pain but of shock, something else he couldn't identify before the world went dark. When consciousness trickled back, it wasn't with the familiar sterile scent of his medical bay or the hum of ship life support. It was cold, damp air, heavy with the scent of ancient stone and something like ozone and crushed minerals. A soft, pulsating light bathed the chamber, not from artificial sources, but from the being kneeling beside him. She was magnificent, terrible, and utterly alien. Her form was humanoid in basic structure. 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, a head, but her skin seemed to ripple with an inner luminescence that shifted in color and intensity with subtle movements. Where the arrows had struck him, dark shapes marred his side, staining the tattered suit. He felt a pressure, alien touch against his wounds, cool and somehow heavy. He tried to speak, a raspy sound escaping his cracked lips. Did we get it? He managed. The question a confused echo of the treaty negotiations. The alien figure paused, her head tilting slightly. The light within her deepened to a swirling indigo. Her voice, when she spoke, was a low resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in his very bones, formal and precise, utterly devoid of the panic that had filled the moments before he fell. The bond is broken. The ritual chamber is compromised. But you intercepted the Karn blight. Her touch shifted, tracing the lines of his ribs. You bled for the sovereign's heir. A low sound, almost a sigh, but deeper, more complex, emanated from her. Such foolish fragility, such unexpected strength. He blinked, trying to focus on her face. It was smooth, angular, with large, liquid eyes that reflected the internal light show. No hair he could see, no obvious ears. Heir, he croaked. Sovereign? Look, I'm just Kalen, the guy who patches people up. Not exactly frontline material. He tried a weak grin, an Earth idiom he doubted translated. It was met with the continued indigo swirl of her inner light, which he was starting to interpret as a form of bemused confusion. Patching up, she echoed, the hum lower this time. You require significant patching. The Karn blight is virulent. It seeks to consume the internal light. She gestured to the dark stains on his side. His breath britched. He was definitely not equipped for internal light consumption. This was so far out of his pay grade it wasn't funny. He was a medic, not a shield for alien royalty against magical-sounding diseases. Great, he muttered. Just another Tuesday. He woke again in a different place. Still underground, judging by the heavy silence and the scent of ancient stone. But the air was warmer, less damp. He lay on something soft and slightly yielding, wrapped in rough-spun alien textiles. The pain in his side was a dull throb now, still significant but bearable. He felt weaker than he'd ever been. The inner light of the alien female was the only illumination in the chamber. She sat cross-legged a few meters away, observing him with that steady, formal gaze. Her inner light was a calm, steady gold now. You are stable, she stated, her voice the same deep hum. The Karn blight was purged. It required a significant transfer of my own essence. He tried to push himself up, wincing. Your essence? Like blood transfusion. She paused, the gold light flickering slightly. Not precisely. It is woven from the internal lattice, necessary to counteract the decay induced by the Karn crystals. He slumped back, bewildered. Internal lattice? Okay, definitely not blood. Right. You saved my life. Again. He felt the weight of that twice now. First by reacting to the attack, then by whatever this essence transfer was. You intercepted the blight, she repeated. as if this was the fundamental equation. The obligation is mutual. My designation is Laraxis. Heir to the resonant holds, she gestured vaguely upwards, towards what he assumed were the layers of rock above them. And you are Kalen, the one who patches. He managed a weak chuckle. Yeah, Kalen, patch expert. He looked around the chamber, trying to get his bearings. It was Spartan, carved directly from the rock. Intricate patterns were etched into the walls, filled with what looked like solidified light, depicting swirling forms and geometric shapes. Where exactly are we, Laraxis? And what was that back there? Someone really didn't want you signing that treaty. Her light shifted, a flicker of silver disturbing the gold. We are within the hidden archives of the ancestral hold, and the attack. It was from the discordant synod. They opposed the unification protocols, seeing the treaty as a weakening of the resonant bloodlines. Discordant synod, he repeated. Sad, unfriendly. They interpret the ancient texts through a prism of isolation, she explained, her voice losing none of its formal cadence, even as her light showed that flicker of silver, maybe irritation. They believe purity of resonance is paramount, untainted by external frequencies. She looked him up and down, his very presence an external frequency in her hidden world. Your presence here is problematic. It was not part of the prophecy of binding. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. Prophecy of binding? Look, all I did was get in the way of some pointy things. I didn't sign up for prophecies. He shifted, his muscles aching. Can you get word to my ship? The Stardust Drifter? She's a survey vessel, not built for combat. But Laraxis was silent for a long moment, her internal light returning to a steady gold. The archives are sealed, the pathways known only to the blooded lines. Communication with the surface world is not possible from within these walls. He stared at her, a cold dread settling in his gut. Stranded, underground, with an alien air and her corrupted priesthood trying to kill her. Well, crap. Days blurred into a slow, painful recovery within the archive chamber. Laraxis provided food, nutrient pastes, that tasted vaguely of minerals and something metallic, and water collected from condensation. She didn't leave him. Her presence was constant, a quiet, luminous anchor in the dim space. She would observe him, sometimes asking precise, dispassionate questions about his physiology, his ship, his world. He answered as best he could, injecting his usual dry humor, which seemed to baffle her more often than not. Yeah, out on Earth we have things called hospitals. They're basically big patch-up stations, but with better snacks. Laraxis's light would swirl into that indigo confusion again. Snacks, edible items, usually unnecessary for survival, but they make you feel better. Comfort food. Comfort, she echoed, the word strange on her resonant tongue, a concept not prioritized in the holds. He discovered she possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of ancient texts and rituals, stored not just in the silent walls but seemingly within her own being. She could project shimmering glyphs into the air, diagrams of energy flow and historical events, illustrating the intricate tapestry of her culture. It was fascinating, alien, and utterly foreign to his pragmatic empirical mind. He in turn explained human concepts, democracy, sarcasm, the ridiculousness of bureaucracy. He told her about the stars, about the vastness outside their rock prison, about the small blue world he came from. He noticed subtle shifts in her. The steady gold of her light would sometimes ripple with silver when he spoke of loss or longing. A faint blush of rose would appear when he described human intimacy, quickly suppressed. Her questions about patching became more focused. She seemed genuinely curious about how he, with his fragile body and limited natural abilities, could mend others. He showed her the basic med kit he'd managed to keep strapped to his leg, explaining antiseptics, sutures, pain management. She watched with intense focus, her internal light pulsing with a curious bright white. You manipulate the external matter to restore the internal structure, she hummed. We guide the internal light to mend the external form. It was a power inversion he hadn't expected. He, the vulnerable outsider, held knowledge vital in a way she hadn't considered. It wasn't just about being a shield. He had different tools. He noticed her favoring her left side slightly, a stiffness in her movement. "Are you hurt?" he asked one day. "From the attack?" She hesitated, a rare thing for her. Her light pulsed with a faint, troubled green, a residual impedance. The Karn blight. It left a trace. She exposed a section of her arm. There was no visible wound, but a patch of her skin didn't shimmer. It was dull, lifeless. His medic's instinct kicked in. "Can I look at it?" She regarded him for a long moment, her large eyes seeming to peer into him. "You wished it a patch?" "If I can," he said simply. That blight sounded nasty. "Don't want it coming back." Slowly, she extended her arm. Her skin felt cool and smooth, almost like polished stone, but yielded slightly to his touch. He didn't understand her internal light, but he understood tissue damage and infection. He didn't have advanced scanners or alien healing tech, but he had earth medicine and a decent understanding of biology. This shared vulnerability, this strange exchange of capabilities, her power saving his life, his knowledge potentially easing her residual pain, was forging an unlikely connection in the deep quiet of the archives. The impedance in Laraxis's arm worsened. The dull patch on her skin spread slightly, and the vibrant shimmer of her internal light dimmed around it. More concerning, she described a dissonance spreading through her internal lattice, affecting her ability to resonate with the ambient energy of the holds, a critical part of her heritage and power. This dissonance was making the hidden passages of the archives harder to navigate, causing minor cave-ins and unpredictable energy fluctuations. The discordant synod was actively hunting her, using the instability they caused to flush her out. They were cornered. "The resonance must be restored," Laraxis stated, her voice tight with a controlled urgency. Kaelin hadn't heard before. Her light was a troubled mix of green and gray. "There is a lesser ritual of clarity within these archives. It can purge the dissonance, but it requires external counter-resonance." Kaelin frowned, running a hand through his sweat-matted hair. "External counter-resonance? What does that mean in plain English?" Laraxis looked at him, her gaze intense. "It means I need to synchronize my internal lattice with a stable external energy source that is fundamentally different from my own, to create a correcting frequency." She paused. "You, Kaelin, your life force, your biological frequency. It is alien, fundamentally separate. It might serve as the counter-resonance." Kaelin stared at her. His biological frequency. Was she saying, "Row," what he thought she was saying?
"You want what?"
"Plug me in." Laraxis's light flickered with something that might have been amusement, or perhaps just the alien equivalent of dry humor. Not precisely plugging. It required physical contact, skin to skin, and a focusing of intent, a merging, however temporary. Our vital rhythms. His mind immediately went to places he hadn't let it go since arriving here. Forced proximity was one thing. This was something else entirely. The thought of touching her, truly touching her, the alienness and beauty of her form, sent a jolt through him that wasn't just fear. "Okay," he said slowly. "Okay, and if it works, the dissonance will be purged. My internal lattice will stabilize. I can navigate the archives safely, reach the upper levels and confront the synod. And if it doesn't," she was silent for a long moment. Her light settled on a steady, somber gray. "Then the dissonance will worsen. The archives will collapse around us, and the discordant synod will claim the holds." The stakes were impossibly high. Not just for her, but for her people, and potentially for his own if this treaty failed. And it all hinged on him, the medic who stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time. He looked at Laraxis, truly looked at her. She was regal, powerful, burdened by duty and a prophecy she hadn't chosen. And she was hurt, vulnerable in a way her culture of emotional restraint likely forbade her from showing. He'd taken arrows for her. She'd used her essence to save him. Their survival was already intertwined. "All right, Laraxis," he said, taking a deep breath. "Tell me what I need to do. Let's try to unfuck this situation." Her light brightened, the soft gold returning, chasing away some of the gray. It wasn't gratitude he saw, or relief. It was something simpler, more profound, acknowledgement of a shared burden. The ritual of clarity chamber was small, circular, and pulsed with a low, resonant hum, Even before they began, glyphs on the walls seemed to vibrate gently. In the center was a shallow depression filled with what looked like liquid light. Lyraxis guided him to sit opposite her on the edge of the depression. She explained the steps in her formal, precise manner, her light a steady, focused gold. We must establish the connection first. A simple touch, palm to palm. She held out a hand. It was slender, with slightly elongated fingers that ended not in nails, but in smooth, rounded pads. He met her gaze, took a breath, and placed his hand in hers. Her skin was cool, the texture smooth, but beneath it he felt a faint, rhythmic pulse, faster than his own heartbeat, but steady. Her internal light flared slightly where their skin met, a confluence of his mundane warmth and her luminous energy. Now, she continued, her voice softer, the hum deeper. We must seek alignment of intent. Focus your will, wish for clarity, for harmony within the lattice. It felt strange, new agey in a way that clashed with the life-or-death reality. But he focused, thinking of a calm sea, clear skies, anything that felt ordered and peaceful. He felt the pulsing beneath her skin intensify. Her light began to swirl, faster now, a kaleidoscope of colors, gold, silver, white, touches of rose and indigo. The counter-resonance, she murmured, her voice almost a whisper carried on the hum of the chamber. It requires proximity, deeper connection. Her other hand reached out, touching his arm, then his shoulder, then her fingers traced the line of his jaw. His breath hitched. It wasn't clinical anymore. Her touch was hesitant, seeking. Her light pulsed against his skin like a second heart. The lattice is resistant, she whispered, her eyes closing for a moment. The dissonance is strong. It requires the greater merging. Kalen swallowed, his mouth dry. He knew what she meant. His body, healing but still aching, was responding to her presence, to the sheer alien intensity of her light and touch, with a primal thrumming of its own. She needed more than just a handhold. She needed the full counter-frequency of his being. Her eyes opened, meeting his. The usual formality was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate need that made her inner light blaze with uncontrolled intensity. It wasn't desire in the human sense, not yet, but something foundational, elemental, the need for his fundamental otherness to integrate with her damaged self. Kalen, she breathed, his name a soft hum. We must sync the core frequencies. She moved closer, her body pressing against his. Her shimmering form felt both solid and ethereal. He could feel the intense vibration of her internal light against his skin, a powerful resonance that seemed to bypass his physical senses and touch something deeper. He needed her, not with desire yet, but with a desperate, shared need for survival, for resolution. And in that moment, faced with the ancient power of the ritual chamber, the imminent threat of the synod, and the raw vulnerability of the alien air pressed against him, Kalen didn't hesitate. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her closer, and gave himself over to the strange, resonant merging. The ritual wasn't like anything Kalen had ever experienced, or could have ever imagined. It began with skin-to-skin contact, yes, but quickly transcended the physical. As Lyraxis guided the synchronization of their core frequencies, his consciousness seemed to expand, merging with hers in a way that defied logic. He saw glimpses of her world through her eyes, not just visual, but resonant. He felt the deep pulse of the archive towers, the hum of the earth, the distant, harmonious song of her ancestors woven into the very stone. He felt the jarring, painful dissonance within her lattice, like a physical wound, a tearing against a delicate fabric. His own presence felt like a disruptive, yet somehow grounding frequency against it. It was overwhelming, a sensory overload that threatened to shatter his human mind. He saw flashes of her memories, filtered through her alien perspective, the weight of expectations since birth, the cold stone of the holds, the faces of her lineage, the growing shadow of the discordant synod, twisting the ancient ways. He felt her fear, buried deep beneath layers of cultural restraint, and her fierce determination. And she, he realized with a jolt, was experiencing him. He felt a rush of alien sensation as she touched upon his own memories, the sting of antiseptic, The warmth of the sun, the laughter of friends, the quiet sorrow of loss, the simple human drive to fix what was broken. He felt her alien confusion at the complexity of human emotion, the way it wasn't contained or easily categorized like her people's internal light. The physical connection deepened, driven by the needs of the ritual, the urgency of the moment. It was primal, instinctual, a biological response to a non-biological stimulus. Their bodies moved together, guided by an energy that was both theirs and external to them. Her light blazed, filling the chamber, swirling around them, through them. His own human warmth felt amplified, feeding into the process. It wasn't about pleasure initially, but about necessity, a desperate co-creation of a counter-frequency. As the climax of the ritual approached, the dissonance within Lyraxis fought back, a painful wrenching in their joined consciousness. He focused, pouring his intent, his simple human desire for things to work to be whole, into the merging. Lyraxis cried out, a sound that was both resonant hum and sharp pain. Her light flared one final, blinding time. Then, silence. The swirling light settled. The hum of the chamber faded. They were left tangled together, skin to skin, breathless. Kalen felt utterly drained, raw, his mind still reeling from the alien intimacy. Lyraxis was trembling against him, her internal light a soft, steady gold again, free of the green-gray dissonance. But something had changed. Where their bodies had been in closest contact, Kalen felt a faint warmth, a lingering echo of the resonant energy. Lyraxis shifted, pulling back slightly, her large eyes unfocused for a moment, as she processed the experience. Then her gaze locked onto his side, the place where the arrows had struck him, where he'd taken the blight. And her internal light flared, not with the ritual's intensity, but with shock. Then something else he couldn't read, a faint, delicate pattern of shimmering gold light, like fine filigree, had appeared on his skin over his ribs. It pulsed with a low, resonant frequency, utterly alien, utterly permanent, a bond mark. The bond mark on Kalen's skin was faint at first, barely visible unless Lyraxis focused her internal light on it. But it was there, a delicate, pulsating pattern of gold light that mirrored the resonant glyphs on the chamber walls. It was warm to the touch, and sometimes, when Lyraxis was near, he felt a subtle vibration beneath his skin, a sympathetic hum that resonated with her own internal frequency. "What is this?" he asked, his voice quiet in the aftermath. Lyraxis touched the mark gently, her fingers tracing the luminous lines. Her face was unreadable, adhering once more to her cultural restraint, but her internal light was a turbulent mix of emotions. Confusion, awe, perhaps fear. "It is a mark of resonance," she hummed, her voice returning to its formal cadence, though softer than usual. "A physical manifestation of a deep energetic link. It is, but a bond mark." "A bond mark," he repeated flatly. Just like that, he was permanently marked by an alien ritual he barely understood, tied to an alien heir whose world was trying to kill her. "Is going to go away?" She looked at him directly now, her eyes deep and serious. "No. A true bond mark is woven into the fabric of the being. It signifies a resonance that transcends the temporary." Her light pulsed with a faint, unexpected lush of rose. "They are exceedingly rare, only given once, if at all." Kalen stared at the shimmering mark on his skin. "So, I'm bonded to you?" Lyraxis was silent, her light returning to a steady gold. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken implications. The physical intimacy of the ritual had been necessary, but the bond mark was something else entirely. A consequence, a symbol of a connection that had formed outside the parameters of the clarity ritual itself. It was a result of everything, him taking the arrows, her saving him, their shared vulnerability and desperate act for survival. It was, he realized with a jolt, the reward the title had promised, far more complex and terrifying than he'd ever imagined. The ritual of clarity was successful, Lyraxis stated, shifting the subject back to the immediate problem. "The dissonance is purged. I can navigate the archives." She rose, her movements fluid again. "The discordant Senate will know the ritual was performed. They will be searching for us, We must reach the higher levels. The external threat hadn't vanished. If anything, it was heightened. Now, they weren't just an heir and an accidental human. They were a bonded pair, whatever that meant in this alien culture, on the run from a powerful, corrupt faction. As they moved through the labyrinthine passages of the archives, Laraxis's ability to sense the resonance of the walls returned. She could feel the subtle energy flows, the hidden pathways, the proximity of others. She moved with a newfound certainty, her light a bright beacon in the oppressive darkness. But Kalen noticed something else. Sometimes, when he was near her, he could feel a faint echo of her emotions through the bond mark. Not clear thoughts, but resonant feelings. A wave of determination, a flicker of anxiety, a quiet strength. The intimacy of the ritual had opened a channel between them, a subtle telepathic link forged by the merging of their core frequencies. He was bonded to her, body and something like soul, in a world that saw his very existence as an external frequency. Navigating the upper levels of the archives was a different kind of challenge. It was less about finding hidden paths and more about avoiding detection. The discordant synod had patrols everywhere, their internal lights dim and cold. Compared to Lyraxis's vibrant glow, they were like shadows in the ancient halls, moving with a disturbing lack of resonance. Kalen, still recovering and with his human limitations, felt like a liability. He couldn't match Lyraxis's silent movement or her ability to blend with the ambient energy. But he had his own skills. He noticed details she missed, the scuff mark on a stone floor, the faint smell of burnt dust from recently used energy weapons, the subtle shift in air pressure that indicated a hidden vent or passage. His human senses, honed by years of survey work in unpredictable environments, provided a different kind of awareness. "Hold," he whispered once, grabbing her arm as she was about to step around a corner. His bond mark pulsed faintly against her skin. Lyraxis paused, her internal light questioning. "Their movement is too regular," he explained, listening intently. "That's a patrol route. They'll be back this way in 5 minutes. We need another way." He spotted a narrow fissure in the wall, almost invisible in the dim light. "Maybe through there." Lyraxis examined the fissure, her light flowing over it. "The resonance is weak there. It is not a recognized passage." "Doesn't mean it's not a passage," Kalen muttered, already checking the stability of the rock. His pragmatic approach, his willingness to improvise and rely on observation rather than ancient resonance, was alien to her, but she trusted him. She trusted the bond mark, he suspected, which pulsed a steady gold when he was focused and certain. They squeezed through the fissure, emerging into a small, dusty chamber filled with dormant energy conduits. It was a forgotten maintenance space, silent and empty. They had avoided the patrol. The subtle telepathic link, forged by the bond mark, was becoming more active under the stress of their flight. He could feel her frustration, her determination, and a growing flicker. There's something softer, directed at him. He sensed her confusion at his methods, mixed with a reluctant respect, and Lyraxis, through the bond, felt his quiet weariness, his surprising resilience, and the steady thrum of his human heart, so different yet now irrevocably linked to her own core frequency. She felt his dry humor like a strange, pleasant static in the background of her thoughts, easing the tension. She was Lyraxis, heir of the resonant holds, bound by prophecy and duty, trained in the ancient ways. He was Kalen, the patch expert, from a distant world, armed with antiseptic and sarcasm. Together, linked by a mark born of trauma and ritual, they were a dissonant harmony, a dangerous, unpredictable force, moving through the heart of the discordant synod's power. The climax was approaching. They found their way to the central chamber, the heart of the archive towers, where the High Synod gathered. It was vast, filled with ancient consoles pulsing with soft light and towering structures carved with the history of the holds. The High Synod members stood gathered, their forms cloaked, their internal lights a dull, uniform gray. At the center stood the Elder of Discord, his light completely extinguished, a void in the luminous space. Lyraxis stepped forward, her form blazing with the vibrant gold of her lineage, the gold of the bond mark echoing on Kalen's side as he stayed slightly behind her, his human form stark against the alien grandeur. High Synod, Laraxus's voice resonated, strong and clear. I, Laraxus, heir to the resonant holds, return. The Elder of Discord turned, a featureless shadow. His voice was a rasp, devoid of resonance. The air is lost, tainted by external frequencies. The prophecy of binding is void. Laraxus stood firm. The prophecy speaks of a binding that restores balance. The Karn blight was discord. The ritual of clarity has purged it. She gestured to Kalen. The external frequency provided the counter-resonance. The elder's head tilted. The human, the creature of chaos and dissonance. You have bonded with it. A ripple went through the synod members. Laraxus didn't flinch. A bond mark has been given, a mark of true resonance. She focused her light, making the gold filigree on Kalen's side glow brighter, visible to all. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. A bond mark with an outsider? It was unprecedented, unthinkable by their rigid, isolationist dogma. This is heresy, the elder rasped, a perversion of the sacred rituals. She is unfit to lead. He raised a hand. The gray-cloaked figures around him moved, energy crackling around them. Kalen knew this was it. He wasn't a fighter, but he was a medic, and he had learned to protect the vulnerable. He also had the benefit of Laraxus's thoughts echoing faintly through their bond. Their plans, her intentions, the weak points of the synod's structure based on her knowledge of the archives. While Laraxus met the elder's challenge with resonant energy, Kalen acted on the edges. He tossed his now empty medkit case into a conduit junction. Laraxus had mentally highlighted, causing a cascade failure and momentarily disrupting the synod's coordinated attack. He kicked a loose stone, tripping a cloaked figure who was trying to flank Laraxus. He wasn't engaging in glorious combat. He was creating chaos, disruption, using his understanding of physical space and simple mechanics against their reliance on energy and ritual. Laraxus was a whirlwind of golden light, clashing against the gray void of the elder. The fight was less physical, more a battle of resonant frequencies, of wills made manifest. Through the bond mark, Kalen felt the immense power Laraxus wielded, and the strain it put on her. He also felt her determination, steel hard and unwavering. She wasn't just fighting for her life, she was fighting for the future of her people, for a different interpretation of their ancient ways, one that could embrace connection rather than isolation. He was part of that fight now, irrevocably linked by the mark pulsing on his skin. The clash of resonant frequencies was deafening, even if much of it occurred on a plane beyond normal human hearing. Laraxus, a light with golden energy, was slowly pushing back the void of the Elder of Discord. Her internal light pulsed with power drawn from her lineage, from the ancient holds themselves, and subtly, Kalen realized, from their bond. His own bond mark pulsed in sync with her, a smaller human echo of her power, grounding her resonance in a way his foreign frequency uniquely could. The synod members, their initial assault thwarted by Kalen's clumsy but effective distractions, now moved to engage Laraxus directly, projecting streams of dull gray energy. Kalen intercepted one, throwing himself into its path. It felt like being hit by a wave of cold, dead air, sapping his strength, but it dispersed against his body, failing to reach Laraxus. His fragility, once a weakness, was a different kind of shield, one that absorbed energy rather than deflected it. He couldn't fight them head-on, but he could interfere, disrupt, absorb. He was the static in their perfect frequency. Laraxus seized the opening he created. With a final, blazing surge of golden light, she met the Elder's void head-on. The collision was spectacular, a silent explosion of pure energy that threw Kalen against the wall. The Elder of Discord crumpled, his cloak falling empty to the ground, his gray light utterly extinguished. The remaining synod members faltered, their gray lights flickering in defeat. The air had prevailed. Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by Kalen's ragged breathing in the settling dust. Laraxus turned to him, her internal light still blazing but softening now, returning to its vibrant, steady gold. She knelt beside him, her hand going instinctively to the bond mark on his side. It was pulsing strongly now, a vibrant gold against his skin. "You fought," she hummed, her voice filled with a quiet astonishment. "You who meant you shielded me." Kalen managed a weak grin, wincing. Someone had to. Didn't exactly have a scalpel for that kind of mess. He felt utterly spent, but the fear was receding, replaced by a strange sense of accomplishment. They had done it. They had won. The surviving Synod members were quickly subdued by loyalist guards, who now entered the chamber. Alerted by the energy surge, Lyraxis, the victor, stood tall, the indisputable heir. Her people, witnessing the defeat of the corrupt Synod and the powerful display of her resonance, aided, inexplicably, by the human, regarded her with awe. And they regarded Kalen, marked with the symbol of her lineage, with profound, bewildered silence. The immediate threat was over, but the victory had created a new complex reality. A human irrevocably bonded to their future leader, bearing the sacred mark of their resonance. The silence in the chamber was heavy with questions about the future. The days following the confrontation were a blur of alien politics and cultural shock. Lyraxis was confirmed as the rightful leader of the resonant holds. The discordant synod was disbanded, their corrupted interpretations of the ancient text rejected. The treaty negotiations with Kalen's people were back on track, now on terms favorable to Lyraxis, strengthened by her restored authority. But for Kalen and Lyraxis, the victory brought a new, unprecedented challenge. The bond mark on Kalen's side was a constant, shimmering reminder of their connection, a visible symbol that resonated not just with Lyraxis, but with the very energy of the holds. The subtle telepathic link persisted, a quiet channel between their minds, allowing them to sense each other's emotional states, a form of intimacy deeper than Kalen had ever known. Lyraxis, no longer bound by the immediate threat or the needs of the ritual, was slowly shedding some of her cultural emotional restraint around him. Her internal light showed nuances he was learning to read, a soft rose for affection, a bright white for curiosity, a faint silver for worry about their situation. The bond mark, she explained one evening, her voice quiet, her light a gentle gold. They were in her private chambers now, a space filled with resonant artifacts and soft flowing light. It is not merely a mark, it is a confluence, a weaving of our core frequencies. It signifies the Shunyan, Junian, Kalen echoed. He understood the word. He wasn't sure he understood the alien meaning. What does that mean here? For you? For me? She looked at the mark on his side, then met his gaze. In the ancient ways, a bond mark of this resonance signifies a joining of bloodlines, a permanent pairing. It is the foundation of leadership, of lineage. Kalen's breath caught. A permanent pairing, marriage, with an alien. But I'm human. I'm from outside. Your culture. They see me as an external frequency. They saw your frequency provide counter-resonance when my own faltered. Lyraxis stated, they saw the mark. The mark is truth in the holds. It is proof of resonance. She paused, her light swirling with a complex mix of emotions. My people are traditional. The mark means you are aligned with my lineage, with me. She reached out, her hand hovering over the bond mark. The prophecy of binding spoke of a union that would restore the holds, guide them into a new era. The synod interpreted it narrowly. But your presence, your actions, the mark, it is a fulfillment. She was saying he was part of her destiny. He, Kalen, the medic who just wanted to go home. His reward for taking the arrows wasn't just survival, it was this. A bond that tied him to an alien queen and her entire civilization. He thought of his quiet life on Earth, the simple satisfaction of mending broken bodies. This was immense, terrifying. And looking at Lyraxis, at the subtle vulnerability in her eyes, at the beautiful alien light that now seemed to pulse in harmony with the mark on his skin, he realized it was also, impossibly, what he wanted. The integration wasn't easy. Kalen was still an outsider, his human habits and idioms causing endless confusion and occasional, unintentional humor among Lyraxis's court. He missed sunlight, open skies, the simple taste of coffee. He had to learn their complex social protocols, their reliance on resonant communication, the meaning behind the subtle shifts in their internal lights. But he wasn't alone. Lyraxis was his anchor, his translator not just of language but of culture and emotion. Their bond mark pulsed, a constant, comforting presence that connected them even across crowded rooms. The subtle telepathic link deepened. They didn't read each other's surface thoughts, but they shared emotional states, needs, intentions. He felt her exhaustion after long council meetings, her quiet joy when they found a moment alone, her frustration with lingering resistance to change. She felt his amusement at formal ceremonies, his occasional loneliness for his home world, his steady affection for her. It was a unique intimacy, built not just on physical connection, but on a merging of fundamental energies and a sharing of silent understanding. The formal declaration of their bond was a major cultural event. Before the assembled holds, in the central chamber where Laraxus had defeated the Elder, she stood beside Kalen. The bond mark on his side pulsed brightly, a beacon of golden light. Laraxus, radiant, her people not just as their leader, but as the other half of a fated union. He took the blight meant for your heir, she stated, her voice resonating with power and emotion. He stood against discord, his frequency provided counter-resonance, and the holds in their ancient wisdom have recognized his spirit. A bond mark has been given. Kalen, the human, is now Kalen of the resonant holds. My heart's true frequency. There were murmurs, whispers, but no open dissent. The mark was undeniable proof to her people. Their leader had chosen, or rather destiny had chosen for her, and the mark sealed the truth. Kalen, standing beside her, felt utterly speechless. He hadn't expected grand pronouncements, just survival. His reward for taking the arrows hadn't been gold or power. It was a lifetime bonded to this extraordinary alien woman, tethered to a world of living light and resonant stone. It was bewildering, terrifying, and in the depths of their silent connection, utterly right. He was a long way from patching up skinned knees on a distant blue planet. He was here, marked, bonded, standing beside his alien queen. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but as Laraxus turned to him, her internal light shimmering with pure, unadulterated rose, an emotion she no longer hid from him, he knew he wouldn't trade it for anything. His home was here now, wherever her light shone.